Welcome. I'm so happy you're here on the podcast this week. I am welcoming my client, Jennifer Lemmert. She is here with us today to share her journey in becoming an independent consultant and really growing her business over the last couple of years. And I can't wait to dive in and hear what she has to share with all of us. So, Jennifer, why don't we just start off and tell us a little bit about you and what you do as an independent consultant?
Hi, Melissa. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here, especially in our matching outfits. So what do I do? I specialize in corporate communications. So what that means is that I help leaders develop their executive voices, whether that's internally for their teams or externally to media and other stakeholders. I help them create and refine their unique leadership brand and connect to the people they need to reach the most. So typically current and future employees, peers in their industry, and beyond. I also focus on employee engagement. So how do companies talk to their people and recruit the right talent to their teams and then keep them once they're there? So with the current state of work and how things have shifted so rapidly in the last few years, there are tons of opportunities for leaders and companies to evolve their communications to meet the challenges of today. And that's where I come in.
It's so exciting I can't wait for you to share some of these experiences that you've had working with corporate clients. And like you said, it's such a needed thing at this point in time, especially the retention side of it and creating a message that resonates to employees. So I know that how busy you are doing that. Tell us a little bit, Jennifer, about why you decided to launch a consulting business and why you've stayed here instead of going back to corporate.
So we have to rewind about 3 years. So about 3 years ago, I took a hard look at what I wanted for the next phase of my career. And I decided that I really needed to focus on 3 goals. 1 was make money, 2, have fun, and 3, work with people I like. And I wanted to be able to do all of those things while having a ton of flexibility. And I didn't think I could check all of those boxes in the corporate world. So while I'm thinking about all of this, it's January 2020. I'm exhausted. At that time, I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old. I'm doing this long commute every day. It's sucking the life out of me. I was to the point where I was no longer challenged by my current job, but I was honestly just too tired to start looking for something else. And I was really at the point where it was either go for a promotion, which I wasn't really sure I wanted, find a new job and potentially new problems. Or I could leave and create something for myself that I enjoyed, something that allowed me to be closer to be home, spend more time with my kids, and just generally be happier. I also knew that we wanted to have another baby at some point. So how was I going to manage growing my family and, pursuing a career that I really loved? So New Year's 2020, I said to myself, okay, this is the year. You have to do something. You have to leave corporate and do something else. Freelancing, yeah, okay, I can freelance. I know people who've done that. But in any case, the goal was take this year, 2020, launch on my own. I have a whole year. I will figure this out. So then, March 2020 happens. The whole world closes down. And suddenly my whole world closed down too. I'm furloughed from my job. And now my new job is taking care of 2 toddlers for the first time. My husband and I, home from work, kids in no care, isolated from our families and friends. I don't have a job. And I'm like, WTF, what do I do now? So here I am being, this full-time mom, something I'd always wondered about. And probably within the first week, I realized it was 100% not for me. So shout out to the moms who their full-time job is being a mom, because I am not cut out for it. So during that time, I'm taking nap times. I'm up all night, working for myself, like trying to figure out, you said you wanted to go out on your own. Well, now I had to figure out how to make it work. So I was reaching out to my network, saying like, hey, person I've never met before who's also in consulting, but I somehow know you on LinkedIn. How did you get started? What advice would you give somebody who's just starting out? I was offering my skills to people for free so I could make more connections.
Yeah.
I was building a website. I was mapping out my service offerings. Like, what would this look like if I went out on my own? And it kind of became like my secret side project. And it really felt like sink or swim. Because I realized that, finding a new corporate job wasn't going to save me. It wasn't clear like what work was going to look like for the rest of that year. So either I was going to figure this out for myself and build my dream life, or I was going to have to go back to something that I knew wasn't a good fit for me at that time. So once I announced that I was launching on my own as an independent consultant, I was terrified to do that, but I got so much support from my network. It was like, why didn't I do this sooner? So that's a very long story of how and why I got started independent consulting, but from one mom to another, it really is about like being tired.
Yes.
And trying to find a way to inject some new energy into my career.
Yeah. I think you and I lasted as stay-at-home moms for about the same amount of time. Couple weeks.
I think my performance review on that one was not good.
100%. That was the worst performance review I've ever received also. I love it. Like you said, shout out to the moms who are able to do that full time, because that is definitely not my forte. Someone the other day asked me, are you a part-time business owner and a full-time mom? And I said, no, I'm a part-time mom and a full-time business owner.
I mean, I would say I'm kind of full-time both.
Yeah.
It's just really in the last year that we've gotten our childcare really nailed down. But I mean, we can talk about more of that later, but I feel like for a lot of us who are out here with little kids, it does become sort of like, your business becomes your other baby.
Yeah.
You have this one thing that you have to nurture consistently all of the time. And then you have your regular kids, your human children, who demand a ton of time and energy too. So, trying to make it all sing together is an interesting juggle, I will say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, Jennifer, tell us what has been the biggest challenge for you so far in your business?
At the risk of being cliche, but I think for me, and I think for a lot of women, one of the biggest challenges is fear of failure. And I felt that when I was just starting out, and I hate to use the word or the phrase imposter syndrome because I feel like it's so overused right now, but it was really this fear of like, what if no one will hire me? And if they hire me, what if they decide that I'm not very good? And if they decide I'm not very good, well, then am I good enough to do this at all? So I tend to indulge in some of that self-defeating thinking before there's really any proof to back it up. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, self-promotion is difficult for me, like putting myself out there, even doing this podcast, so far out of my comfort zone. So this is like one way of me overcoming some of those challenges. But there's hope. I really had to get over that mindset and put myself into the mindset of the person that I aspire to be. So literally, I'm a business owner now. So what would a business owner think? What would they say? What would they do? I want to be hired for my expertise. So what would an expert think or say or do? And I've had to learn some tough lessons along the way about doing what's best for me. But I've come such a long way since I started. And sometimes I can see those bad habits start to creep up, but I can recognize them better now. And I can look for ways to kind of get through them instead of them being sort of like stopping me from moving forward. I'm looking now at like, I'm almost past those and like, what's the next challenge going to be? So I can tackle that head on too. So I'm really excited for what the next few years have to offer so that it can push me even further than I am right now.
Yeah, such a transformation from, and really a jolt, when you're spent so much time in corporate and build up that identity that's attached to being a corporate employee and the successes around that. And then all of a sudden you're, so many of us, I think we're accidental consultants.
Yeah.
Something like you said was on the list, but not necessarily, maybe not that exact timing. But really getting into that mindset of I love the way you just described that. What would a business owner do? What would an expert do here? And really asking yourself those questions in that frame of mind produces such high quality answers, and starts making you think as yourself in that way. So,
oh, definitely. Because if that's the face you want to present to the world, you're not doing yourself any favors by, sitting in the background and being your own worst critic and tearing yourself down before you even get in front of, a client or a potential client or a potential partner. So I think it sometimes feels a little bit cheesy, but in some ways you do have to amp yourself up, or I have to amp myself up to say, this is who I am now. You're not, an intern who doesn't know what's what. You have a lot of experience, you have a lot to offer. So own that space and, make yourself feel like you are the type of person that you want to work with.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. So let's bridge into that a little bit, Jennifer. So you're a corporate communications expert, you're an expert in branding executives and their voice. So tell us a little bit about what best practices you recommend for consultants that they could apply to their own businesses in that way.
Yeah. So, I think there's really, 3 top suggestions that I would have for people who want to claim their own executive voice and brand. So it comes down to being yourself, giving good feedback, and appreciating people. So I'll just go through each one. The biggest thing to be yourself, not the person you think you're expected to be. So it's a little bit of a nuance from what I was just talking about, right? So, you want to come across as authentic and transparent, because that's what builds trust. And that's true for me when I'm working with clients. It's true for my clients when they're working with their stakeholders. The pandemic has opened the door very, very wide for people to be their most genuine selves. Dogs barking, kids screaming, delivery person at the front door. So we really need to take that opportunity and just be okay with people seeing more of who we are, because those are the connection points. Those are the things that make us human. That's what makes you trustworthy. That makes you the type of person that somebody else wants to work with, work for, and believe in. Secondly, I said about giving honest feedback. And you want to make sure that feedback is, kind and encouraging as well. So you don't just want to be like a yes man or a yes woman. Don't just tell people what they want to hear, because eventually they see through it. And nobody appreciates being led down the wrong path because you were afraid of saying the wrong thing. I ask for that feedback from my clients too. What can I do better? Is there something I can help you with? And I think being okay with admitting when you're wrong or where you made a mistake, and then coming armed with a plan to fix it or make sure it doesn't happen again. These are all different facets of being authentic that help to make a difference. The third thing, appreciating people. And when we're in this super fast-paced world, I think sometimes it's hard to remember to do that, but go out of your way to appreciate people. What's the saying? It costs nothing to be kind, but the rewards are huge. And that means everyone from the admin who picks up the phone or answers the first email, or if it's the first person who shows up to a meeting and you don't know them, or it's a vendor. People remember when you acknowledge them, when you make them feel seen, and you make them feel important. For me, I tend to remember a lot of those kinds of details, kids' names or people's hobbies, where someone went on vacation. That kind of thing just stays in my brain. So I can't remember where my car keys are, but Melissa, I know that your sons swim and play soccer. And it's not just a good business practice, right? It's a good life practice. Yeah. And it doesn't come easily for everyone. And I have we'll get to it later, but I have some tips for how you can sort of build some structure around that. So it doesn't feel forced every time, but no one wants to feel like everything's just transactional. They want to feel valued. And when they feel valued, they will typically treat you well and they'll help you get done what you need to get done. So too long, didn't read answer. If you can just remember to be yourself, give good feedback, and appreciate people, it's amazing how much impact that can really make.
Yeah, I think those are so important to think about, because sometimes we fall into this trap of a consultant that we need to be efficient and we need to help them, progress really quickly, and then it becomes more transactional. And I think sometimes we think, well, they don't want to really know who I am. I'm not an employee, or I don't have the right to go, start spending time developing relationships because, they're paying me. And so just really being thoughtful about, even though you're not an employee, still focusing on building those relationships, because ultimately the success really relies on being trustworthy and people trusting the expertise and advice that you're and recommendations that you're making. I love how succinctly you shared that with us.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to feel like they are on the receiving end of like, what can you do for me? Right. I hate when I get that kind of stuff where, it's like, oh, how's the weather? And actually, can you put me in touch with this person? It's like, wait a second, you missed like a whole bunch of steps here. So I can only imagine, on the receiving side for clients, whether it's even my direct client or just somebody who's in that orbit, everybody deserves to feel like somebody cares about what they're doing every day. Like not everybody's there to just help you along the way necessarily. You just I get a great deal of satisfaction just having some of those like one-off conversations with people. I'm the annoying person that starts a conversation with like the person at the grocery store. So that might just be me, but I think if you can apply some of those little tricks when you're working, I think it makes the workday feel more enjoyable, and it feels more like a two-way street.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll dive in a little bit here in a minute about one of your strengths is networking. And so really helping other people take what you're doing and replicate that, I think will be really valuable. But before we dive into that, I wanted to ask you on more of a personal note, you mentioned the kids, now you have 3. So the beginning of the story, you started with 2. Now you've got 3.
What was I thinking?
I don't know. This 3-kid club is a challenge for sure. Tell me, as you work to balance growing your business and growing your reputation as a consultant, what does that look like as you're balancing that with young kids and a spouse who travels frequently?
Yeah. So I'll start by setting the stage of kind of what my personal life looks like. So I have 3 boys under 5. The youngest actually turns 1 this week. And he was born a year into launching my business. Crazy. My husband has done a lot of traveling in the last year, so I've had to navigate a lot on my own. So shorthand to say, my life is generally a chaos zone. And I think any working parent would agree, there's no balance once you have kids. There's really only survival. Maybe it gets better once they're all in school. I don't know yet.
It does a little bit.
It does? Okay.
Yes.
Thank God. I mean, so I say survival, I'm sort of kidding. I'm sort of not. But I say all that just to be very clear that I don't have it all together. Every day kind of feels like being shot out of a cannon. So I don't want to sugarcoat that. It's very tempting on LinkedIn or Instagram or anywhere on social media to make it look like you have it all together and have this very carefully curated life. But I just want to lay out the facts, ma'am, which, it's a constant struggle to find any kind of breathing room. So now that we have that out of the way, I think most importantly, it starts with my relationship with my husband, not to be a total cornball, but he and I work very closely together to support each other's work. He's been a huge cheerleader for me from the very beginning. And I think if you're partnered up, the other person has to be your strongest supporter and be willing to pick up the slack when you need it. I mean, we just do that for each other. We trade off, we tag in, we tag out. We negotiate multiple times a week on scheduling so we can make sure that the top things are covered. And that's usually client meetings and childcare.
Yeah.
So, and he also encourages me to take time for myself. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. So he's happy to send me off to meet up with friends or get a mani-pedi or something when I need a break, and he can, be the stay-at-home dad for the evening or whatever. So we have a pretty good balance that way. It's not always exactly 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10, but we make it work. And, to be honest, I really struggle with giving myself a break and finding any kind of balance. Because I think a lot of parents and a lot of business owners, well, probably everybody feels that there's always something else you could be doing. So I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that way. It's very easy to get overwhelmed. So to be 100% honest, I'm working through all that in therapy too, which I highly, highly recommend, to just be able to unload some of this stuff on an unbiased third party and kind of, be able to collect yourself and move through and strategize for how to find more of that balance. But the beauty of managing my own schedule is part of why I wanted to be an independent consultant. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on building more of those breaks into my life. So adding even just small times where I'm away from everyone and everything, like going to the gym or going for a walk. I don't have to talk to anybody, even though I'm an extrovert and I love talking to people. Sometimes I need a break too. I can really just zone out, and that's been super helpful. The biggest thing I've done this year that I'm looking forward to, I scheduled myself a solo corporate retreat. So just me, a weekend for this summer. I'm literally checking into a hotel by myself just to rest and regroup, and nobody's allowed to bother me. So, those are all things that I've done. Those are kind of like big things. I think some stuff that's, can be applicable to anybody is, when things are really exploding on the personal side, I just look back or look and see where I can scale back to make things a little bit more manageable. And this is connected to being authentic also, because my clients know who I am. They know that I work really hard for them, but they also know I'm not an FTE. And they know I'm juggling 3 kids under 5, sometimes by myself, so they really respect when I say, hey, I was up all night with a sick kid. I'm not batting 1,000 today. Or, you might see a tiny head pop up on this call because my husband's away for a few weeks and my kid has a fever. And so if I'm in that kind of situation, I try to just look at my day in chunks of time where I can be most productive. So I'll attend the meetings I absolutely have to attend. And then sometimes I'll be done for the afternoon and then sign back on from 9 to midnight because that's the quietest time in my house. So that's all a very long answer to how do I find balance, but the truth is it's a work in progress that I'm still working on, and I'm open to any tips too that other people have that I could apply to my life.
Yeah, I think, I love this idea that it's so fluid, right? Because a lot of times we kind of get this picture in our mind that there's some balance, like that it should look like all the time, and being really fluid and deciding what it's going to look like on a daily basis or weekly basis. And also the corporate retreat, that part I love. It took me a long time to even figure out, I get to decide if I'm going to go on a corporate trip. I get to decide what, how I might invest in my business. It took a while for me to realize that I don't need a budget or approval from some other person, that I get to decide. It's so fun. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Yeah. And I would say that's like the big bucket, that's the big bucket of like finding balance, is being able to take a huge break like that. Not everyone can do that. I've literally never done it. So that's huge for me. And I think sometimes, it's not like taking a weekend necessarily. It's like looking ahead to the next hour sometimes. Like, what do I have to do to get through the next hour? What do I have to do to get through the next afternoon? And sometimes you just have to do that to be able to manage. I mean, anybody who's had a sick kid or multiple sick kids, or, trying to balance meetings with kids or other, like, home renovations, anything that's going on in the background of your life. sometimes it really is just doing what you have to do to survive.
Yeah. And not judging yourself for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that can be really tricky too, like letting go of the guilt that I can't do everything. It's okay to rest. It's okay to throw up your hands and say, like, I can't take on one more thing, and scale some of that stuff back until you do get to a point where you are more of a functional human being who's getting enough sleep and enough food and you're well hydrated, all those things.
Yeah. One of the things you and I had worked on together is creating a minimum viable process. And so it's so fun to be able to lean on that when, like you said, when times are kind of crazy on the personal front or crazier, and being able to really rely on some kind of a minimum viable process for your business can be really valuable too.
Yeah. I mean, and when you shared that with me, it was like a light bulb moment, because it's not even just the MVP for work. Sometimes it's the MVP at home too. Sometimes it's like telling my 5-year-old, like, I don't have any time to fold your laundry. Just find 2 socks that match, right? Like that's the minimum. I got your clothes into the washer and dryer. You gotta pick up and find your own socks. So I'm applying that in many areas when things get crazy.
Absolutely. I love it. Let's go back to the networking and relationship building side of your business. Cause from my vantage point as your coach, one of your strengths is really that ability to network and grow and maintain relationships. And I'm just curious what advice you might share with other independent consultants who want to improve their ability to create a pipeline through networking.
Mm-hmm. I mean, relationship building goes back to being authentic, right? I talked about that before. Yeah. If you want to build relationships just so you can build a pipeline and make money off of people, that's the wrong approach. Stop that. Like people see right through that and they're turned off. Yeah. I mean, I said it before, I don't want to be treated as transactional. So I don't treat people that way either. You have to be coming from a genuine place of wanting to be connected to people, wanting to learn from them, wanting to help them, not just look out for number one or look out for the bottom line. So I can't stress that enough. When you prioritize the relationship piece, the pipeline will build itself. You won't have to stress out about like, oh, I'm about to, this contract is about to end. I don't have anything. You will be in constant conversations with people who will want to work with you. I have a long list of people that I want to work with when I get a little more time, because we've developed those really kinds of relationships over time. I'd start with this caveat though. I was a painfully shy kid. So the idea of going into a social situation and making small talk or trying to make a new friend was terrifying. I hated it. But at some point, either I realized or maybe somebody told me that if I didn't try to connect with other people, I was basically going to be invisible. I mean, that's kind of the switch flip right there. Mm-hmm. If you are not out there trying to build relationships with people, you might as well be invisible. So when it's difficult for you to kind of make the first move, what I did when I was much, much younger, I just started watching how other people interacted. I mean, my parents are amazing relationship builders, by the way, so I had great role models there. But then I just started practicing by putting myself out there. I mean, sometimes I looked silly, sometimes I didn't, but the more I did that, the more comfortable I felt. So now I'd consider myself an extrovert, or maybe just a reformed introvert at this point. But I think it's important to just recognize, like, it doesn't come easily for everybody. And it can be like a growth experience over time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So I just suggest like maybe 2 ways to start honing relationships. So first, I'd say reach out on social media. And secondly, bring something to the other person. So a little bit of explanation behind each of those. So social media has made staying in touch so easy, and it's so much less fraught, I think, than even 5 years ago. For me, it comes naturally because this is sort of my business. But to see something on someone's feed and just shoot them a quick note, so like on Instagram, like, oh, hey, that looked like an amazing trip. how are you doing? Or, I'm thinking about going there. What was great about that place? Or, on LinkedIn, like, hey, congratulations on the new job, and ask questions about their new job. You do that enough over time and you're building rapport with somebody. And maybe at the end of one of those quick conversations, you see if they're cool with like setting up time to chat. And, maybe business comes up, maybe it doesn't, but you have to go into it with no expectations and leading with that relationship first. And for anybody who's listening and says like, oh, social media isn't my thing, you have to make it your thing. You have to put some effort into making connections there. Because for people to know you a little bit better, you have to be able to have a way to chat with them. And that's a really easy way to do it. You can also, for people you might have a closer sort of starting relationship with, maybe it's a former colleague or an acquaintance, shooting them a text or an email instead to see how they're doing. That's another easy way to reach out. So the second thing I said was to bring something to the other person. So when you have those catch-up conversations, you have to offer something. So whether it's an interest in what they're up to, maybe you're asking for their advice on a situation, or maybe you're offering a lead to something or somewhere, or offering to make a connection with somebody they know, or somebody that that they might want to know. So maybe nothing comes of it, maybe something does, but regardless, that person remembers that you showed an interest in them and you were willing to put yourself out there in a friendly way. So those are my two biggest recommendations. Talk to your connections on social, make meaningful connections there, offer something to the other person. And, I mentioned I'm a former introvert, so I know it can feel scary, it can feel forced, or it might even feel fake sometimes. But if it does feel that way, just to sort of get you over the hump, I'd say put a little structure around relationship building. So don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Like, you don't have to have 30 conversations a month. You can challenge yourself to have, 1 or 2 messages that you're sending out a month, or scheduling one virtual or one in-person meetup a month. And then you can also take notes on the people in your network as you're reaching out, who you talked to, what you talked about, where you left things. And then the next time you have those notes to fall back on, to make those conversations feel a bit more natural. So in a world where things are moving super, super fast, I think people appreciate when you take that time to invest in learning from them and valuing them without the expectation of something in return.
Yeah. And that makes it so much lighter too, right? When you're going into a conversation and you haven't put pressure on yourself to try to turn it into something specific. Right. It makes it so much easier on you. And also it comes across in a much more of an authentic way to that other person. So kind of lightens the load on both ends.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, we're all human. Coming at somebody like because you're interested in their life is much different than coming at somebody and just being interested in what you can get out of them. There's such a, people might think they're really slick on that piece of it, but I'm telling you, it's so obvious. So I think it's just a matter of, be in it for the long haul, not like, oh, I'm going to talk to this person for 3 times, then I'm going to nail down a contract with them. That's not the way life typically works. You have to come at it from a place where even if you got nothing out of it, even if not $1 came from that conversation, these are the building blocks that help you, lead to future things. These are the practice conversations that maybe help you to be ready for, that high value conversation or client negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for me, I'm sure you've had these same experiences. I've probably networked with hundreds and maybe not thousands. I don't know. I don't keep track of the numbers.
I bet you have.
Maybe thousands of people, definitely hundreds of people. And a lot of those conversations is so great to meet new people and try to help connect them to other things. And then, the ones that you think I'm just excited to meet this person. I'm sure nothing is really going to come of this. Then, for me, one of those conversations turned into, 2 years worth of business. Wow. So you're just where you least expect it. And so going in, like you said, without expectation, can turn out in so many different ways you may never have imagined.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Both on the personal side, meeting really amazing people, and on the professional side.
Yeah, exactly.
Jennifer, tell us you've been in business now for a couple of years. You have a COVID, basically we can attach the timing of your business to COVID, which is
Yes.
always easy to remember, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all remember March 17th or whatever the day was in 2000. So tell us what you've learned in the last couple of years that looking back, you wish you would have known earlier.
I've only spent 2.5 years as an independent consultant. So I have to say there's still so much that I have to learn. But in that short time, I can honestly say that I've really learned to value who I am and what I bring to the table. So when I was in corporate, there was a lot of room for me to question my expertise, because you only have one time of year where you're getting your report card, your performance review. Yeah. Either you get an A+ or you get like a B- high C, right? And, I felt like the whole year boiled down to that one conversation with my manager. So the whole year I'm like afraid I'm going to make a misstep, because I'm going to hear about it in the next few months. And that can be a lot of stress. Now with my clients, I feel like I've found my voice. I'm not competing with anyone for a promotion. I'm not playing office politics, and I'm not caught up in the gossip mill. My whole job is really to make the client look good. It's not to make myself look good so that I get a better title or a nicer office or anything like that. And that's very freeing. So, I can say, here's what I think based on my experience, and here's where I think you can put your best foot forward. So since my independent career is so short, I can say that I wish that earlier in my career overall, I would have had the confidence that I do now. I wish I had known all of that like 10 years ago, but here we are. We take the path that we're meant to be on. So yeah, I think just really leaning into my expertise, leaning into my confidence, kind of being aware of where my strengths are and where my weaknesses are, and saying, how can I use these things in the best way to benefit my clients?
Yeah. Giving yourself permission to really label yourself as that expert, as the person who's gained that knowledge and expertise, and might not necessarily know everything, right. But really looking at that and saying, what, I know enough to help this client progress forward and accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish, and coming at it from that angle versus I'm learning and I'm becoming an expert in this area.
Yeah. I think that's a really subtle difference, sort of, positioning yourself as an expert, but I'm an expert, but I don't know everything about every situation. I know it in the context of my own experience. So, I can give my best opinion, but that doesn't mean that there's not more to learn, or that's necessarily the right answer. That's where it really becomes like a collaboration between you and the client. And I think I'm really able to operate in that space because, I can bring the years of experience that I have, but also say like, hey, well, what do you think? Oh, you don't think it's going to land that way? Totally fair. Let's think about how to rework it. So it really pulls in kind of that flexibility piece too. So I just want to be very clear when I say, being confident about my expertise doesn't mean that I'm so confident that that there's not room to learn more. There's not room to have that kind of collaboration with partners or clients or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us, what do you want your business to look like in the next few years?
If I start back with my 3 goals, make money, have fun, work with people I like, as long as I'm doing those three things, I think I'm going to feel successful. I'm in that place right now. So I feel very, very fortunate, very successful. But, more tangibly in the next few years, my ultimate goal is to partner with more of my independent consulting friends and team up on bigger projects together. I'd love to be in a position to work with other women, helping them to build their businesses, learning from them, working together with fun clients, making a difference, and really expanding that reach. I know so many brilliant, talented women in the communication space. So I'm always on the lookout for ways to work with more of them. So I'll just put this little plug. If that's you and you're listening to this podcast, please feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, I mean, those are my goals: make money, have fun, work with people I like. So I'm on that track right now. And success is just to be able to say that every year I'm doing more of that. I'm hitting those 3 goals.
Yeah. So first of all, take Jennifer up on her offer, and we'll put the link in the show notes for how to reach her. But she is so well connected, and also just such a so good at cultivating relationships, like we've talked about already, and teaming opportunities and that kind of thing. So it would be really fun to see some good collaborations sprout out of today's podcast for sure.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And I also love the business plan. So simple, right? Make money, have fun, be flexible.
Listen,
So
I'm a simple gal. I'm not if I were looking at things based on revenue goals or percentage year over year, I'd be lost. That's not my strength. Let me say that.
Love it. So good. Okay. So if you're game to share, Jennifer, tell us a little bit. So you and I work together in a coaching relationship. So tell us a little bit about, why did you decide to hire a coach?
Yeah, well, I can even take it back further, Melissa. Before I had the privilege of working with you, I actually started working with a coach first when I was furloughed, like within those first few weeks, and I was trying to figure out what to do next. She lives in my neighborhood. If it's okay, can I say her name?
Sure.
Karen Esser. Yeah. She really helped me be accountable on the steps that I was taking to start this business. When I was really kind of in, kind of a black hole of self-pity that I didn't have a job. She gave me so much encouragement when I was feeling like a complete failure in the beginning. She was really cheering me on for every little win I had. And, this is in the hottest days of the pandemic, right? So, being able to work with her on something that I felt like I could really control and own when everything else felt out of control was really game changing for me. So shout out to Karen.
Shout out to Karen. So good.
So Melissa, working with you is different because I reached out to you when I was about a year in to consulting, because I knew that I had 0 business processes, like none, right? You can attest to that. I wasn't even doing my own invoicing. I was not set up to be efficient at all. I didn't know how to build a pipeline. I didn't have these hard skills. I was missing all of them, just basic how to run a business 101. I was an English major. Okay. So I'm very right-brained, and I really needed to work with an expert on helping me prioritize and get set up so that I could run this business like it was a business, and not just like, I was doing the fun stuff that I was really good at and kind of ignoring all the, balance sheets and numbers and planning stuff that really needed to be on the priority list too. And then on the flip side, I was really struggling with the mindset. Like I said before, I mean, I don't even think I realized how off my mindset was at that time. So it's really a wonder that I was able to get anything off the ground, because I was really working from a place of fear a lot of times, questioning whether I could make the business piece work, taking some of the people pleasing parts of myself to the extreme where it was actually hurting me both personally and professionally. So I needed help getting into that business owner mindset, and I needed help to separate the business from the personal. Like, how do I take my feelings out of it? How do I focus on growing both in the short term and the long term? And I think, working with someone like you, Melissa, working with a coach really helps you kind of get out of your own head and put some plans to paper and figure out how to take action on them, and then be accountable too. Because if I was left to my own devices, I still would have been like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, we'll just chip away at it a little bit each week and get to the point where now you've got a well-oiled, and from my perspective, I'm sure there's things you would still want to work on, but a well-oiled.
Of course.
Yeah.
Listen, progress, not perfection, right?
That's right. That's right. Tell us a little bit about what was it like working with a coach?
I mean, to be honest, some days it was kind of embarrassing because, you'd ask me about like tell me about your P&L statement. And I'm like, my what and what? I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But again, it was so valuable because I didn't know really what I didn't know. And I had to have sort of a sounding board for which processes would be most beneficial for me, to position the business side so that I could just do some of those basic operations for today and then eventually grow further down the road. And I needed somebody like you to objectively ask me questions like, well, why do you believe that about yourself? What would shift if you looked at that situation in a new way? How can you plan so that you're showing up the way you want to? When you do those things over time and you can sort of model it ahead of time, you get more practice, you really start to adopt them into your regular ways of working. So now the mindset shift is becoming more and more my regular starting point. It's not something that I really have to reach for. It's sort of my day to day. Like I said, the business processes are still a challenge because I'm extremely right-brained. But the framework is there for me to be successful. I just have to be disciplined about, moving into that left brain space and making those processes work for me.
Yeah. And it can be such I've talked about this a lot. I have my own coach who I work with on a weekly basis, and it can be so vulnerable, right? Coming into these conversations and talking about what you finished and what you didn't, what isn't working and what didn't go well and what you might not understand, and just being able to have that safe space to talk through and be honest with yourself. It can be so valuable to move forward without that self-judgment that we're all so good at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what might have changed for you in your, you touched on this already, but anything else that changed for you in your business or even personally, as we work together?
I've really changed how I approach everything, instead of approaching it from a place of weakness or lack of knowledge and, just why am I not where I think I should be at this point? I've been able to give myself a lot more grace that way because I sort of have like your voice echoing in the back of my mind. I have some of the work that we've done that I can refer to. Before I would just beat myself up for not knowing something like, why don't I know the best way to manage this? Yeah. And now I can reframe it and say, well, okay, this piece is new to me. I've never done this before, but I want to learn how this works so that I can understand and build up those skills. So really, I understand that I get to create what success looks like to me. And I'm able to give myself more credit for the things I'm accomplishing instead of, continuing to move the goalposts. I can believe now that I'm successful today and I'm going to be successful moving forward. I can comfortably say, I believe in my business and there's no such thing as failure for me because I've gotten this far. It all ended today. I would still feel like it was a success because it's really all about staying true to who I am and what I want my life to look like.
So good. Tell us, just having those guiding principles. It comes back to the guiding principles, right? I want to have fun. I want to make money and I want to work with people I like, right, and in a flexible way. So that's really looking at it from that lens. You could never not be a success. So. Yeah.
And I mean, that's not to say that would work for everybody, but I think when you can break it down into sort of like simple pieces that way, it feels more attainable. You can find more satisfaction in what you're doing because those are like kind of objective or not objective, subjective. An English major doesn't know the right word, but those are, imagine that. those are goals where I get to say, at what point do I feel like I'm having fun? Like, am I working with people I like? Am I making money? Yes or no. It's not about like number of dollars necessarily, right? how are all those things working together? And am I truly enjoying what I'm doing? And I can say yes. And I can say in the last 2.5 years, the answer is yes. So I feel really good about where I've come from, even with the challenges. And I feel really good about where I'm headed to.
Love it. So fun to work with you and
likewise
be part of your journey. Tell us, Jennifer, is there anything else you wanted to share that we haven't covered yet?
I don't think so. I feel like I've talked a lot.
It's so good. So many good notes. I've been taking notes as we've gone. So I appreciate you coming and here on the podcast. I know it's not your favorite thing to do, but sharing all of your perspectives and lessons learned, I know will be really valuable for everyone to hear. So thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. I can say I wouldn't do this for everybody, but I would do it for you. So in a coordinating outfit, no less.
That's right. If you go watch it on video on YouTube, you can see our matching shirts. So good.
That's fun to watch it live.
That's right. Thanks, Jennifer. We'll talk with you soon.
Thank you.